to take Gail off of mute. It should give you a little pop-up there, Gail, so that it says that you're on mute. You can say, yes, please take me off mute. There we go. And I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, well, I was going to start with all the horrible stuff that's happened in lockdown and over the last year. I say for me, there are three good things that have come out of lockdown. One is the WhatsApp clips that I've been getting, fantastically good, funny, brilliant, especially in lockdown 1, but even lockdown 2, especially about the US elections. They were just brilliant. The second thing is the fact that now restaurants can't be opened anymore. So all these Michelin chefs are serving their stuff, they're cooking it and serving it nationwide. So every day delivered to your home, in theory, you can have a Michelin star meal for 50 quid, which I think is a fantastic idea. And of course, Zoom. When I first came into it in lockdown 1, I wasn't mad about it. I realized how much we all depend on smell and taste of each other and touch. It was frustrating. You'd have a party with people and you didn't feel like you put a film. But this time around, lockdown 2, I just think it's absolutely brilliant. I've done a lot of things I would never have done otherwise. I've gone to lectures I would never have gone to otherwise. I get to wear my socks in everything and my slippers in all these things. And you don't know what trousers I'm wearing. You don't need to know. In fact, on last Thursday, I went to a lecture that Brian Clugg gave in Oxford, which I would probably never have got to otherwise. And it was called, it was a discussion of a book he gave on Israel and Jewish questions, and on Israel and the Jewish question. And halfway through this talking of wearing your socks, a man took off his shirt. Quite an attractive man. His house a tell in the box, but he was quite attractive, 40s, and seemed to be washing his armpits. And then he took off, I don't know if I was imagining this or if it actually happened, he took off his trousers. And I thought, oh my God, does he realise that we can all see what he's doing? But then luckily it all went black. We didn't see any more. And Brian told me later that he's the research fellow for the study of love in religion. I don't know if that was anything to do with it. And next Saturday, Gabby and I have tickets to see a psychoanalyst I particularly admire at the Melanie Klein Institute. Again, I wouldn't have gone. And it's called Love, Death and the Superego. And when I bought the ticket, I thought, wow, what a title. Who could resist something called Love, Death and the Superego? And it's based on a book he's written of the same name. And he told me when he was writing it, his wife and daughter read it and they asked him what he should call it. And his daughter said, if you want it to sell, make sure there's sex in the title. So obviously he did. So of course, I called this talk Sex, Death and Writing, and it's got nothing to do with sex or death, unlike Ron's talk. But everyone's gone, you know. So if that's what you're interested in, you can go now. Don't care. But it does bring out to me the importance of a title to draw, and this is from the point of view of an audience, to attract the right audience. So the title has to make you want to buy the book, look at it, watch the film, do the course. When I was working at Greenwich University in my 30s, I suppose I taught a course. I taught the MA on Freud. It was called Freud. Everyone came up, and when I was at university, the courses were called things like Epimet, epistemology and metaphysics, Greek philosophy. Not things that are madly anyone would, philosophy of mind, not things you think, yeah. But when I was in my 20s, I worked for London University teaching their evening classes. And what it had just changed. What happened with evening classes was that if you couldn't get, I think it was 15 people, maybe it was 12, I can't remember. If they didn't sign up and pay, the course didn't run. So the course I was doing was on Freud, the first course. It was at the Camden Institute. And you call your course Freud, you know, if you're lucky, you get 5 people, 9 people sign up. Freud and dreams, maybe, you know, you get enough. But what I called it sex and dreaming. I had that little poster of Matisse's painting called Dance, where you got these naked women dancing around in a circle, and 23 people signed up. It was exactly the same course, but a lot of people signed up. The same number of people finished, probably only 8 people, 9 people came to the end of it. Would have been exactly the same, but it didn't matter, it ran. So that had taught me early on the importance of what you call something, whether it's a, you know, of course that is true of books as well, and games, Gabby, and television things. So if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing. If a thing's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. If a thing's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. That's a famous G.K. Chesterton quote line. I don't know. And I used it as a mantra when I first started writing, probably in my 20s. I don't remember. It was I haven't thought about it for ages until I came to be thinking about saying something today. Because the truth is, if you want to write and you're waiting to write like George Eliot or even Graham Greene or Le Carre, you will never start. You'll never begin. You have to be prepared for it to not be a great piece of prose, a lovely writing that you'd like to be proud, that you're proud of read. You just have to get it out there. And part of writing is you do feel you've revealed. I'm not talking about non-fiction, I'm talking about fiction. You do feel you've revealed part of yourself, perhaps part you don't want anyone to know about. But if you don't try and do it badly, you won't do it at all. Even if you are George Eliot, you won't write like George Eliot. You just have to do it. If you wait for perfection, you'll never start. So that, I used to say that to myself, I'd forgotten, but I used to say that to myself every day in order to get myself going. So so for my first couple of books, I didn't write a synopsis at all. I just wrote. I mean, I sort of knew what was going to happen, what the end was going to be, what was going to happen along the way. But I had a lot of conversations in my head, a lot of scenes I wanted to get down. And afterwards, I had to throw so much away, both books, because in order to tell a story, it didn't quite travel well. So I wrote lots of stuff, the best stuff probably I had to get rid of. And what any creative writing course you do, any publishers you speak to, any doing courses, anyone like that will always say you've got to write a synopsis, and you've got to write a detailed synopsis, ideally. So you have to know not only what's going to happen, but what's going to happen along the way, neither of which I had done, either for Dance to Daddy or for Strange Embrace, the first 2 books. So no synopsis, a lot of cutting and a lot of throwing away, a lot of waste paper, a tree of paper. And this time I thought, this is my 3rd book. I always think the next book's going to be the really good one. But anyway, this one's not bad. This time I thought I'll do what they say, and I'll start at the beginning and I'll write a synopsis. I'll do less cutting, less throwing away. And the synopsis, I've mostly ignored it because it's a strange balancing act. when you're writing, because of course things have to just happen, and you think, oh my God, she hasn't done that. What an awful thing to do, or he hasn't gone there. Why would anyone do that? And then you have to make that make sense to everyone, including yourself. But much more, I'm following what I've said will happen. I know what's going to happen at the end. I am following what I've said that will happen. It's quite hard to cut things once you've written them. They sort of exist. They've been said. It's very hard just to sort of undo that. You can't really quite do that. So but I think what one's doing is something psychologically very different from writing. So I think when I was saying if a job's worth, if a thing's worth doing, it's worth doing badly, I was thinking about writing. But I think what creative writers are talking about, creative writing courses are talking about when they talk about synopsis, is producing a book. And I think producing a book is a different psychological, it's a different psychological task. So you could be able to write and not have it there to write a book, or some people have it naturally and don't have to even think about it. So I think the two things are different. I think I'm creating a book much more this time rather than just writing. And I think, I don't know, I'll have to ask you what, I think the title comes into it somewhere. In other words, the title, I always thought is very important for the audience. You don't buy the book if you don't like the title, probably, unless you've heard from someone. But I also think it's important for the author, the person writing it. I think it brings the book together as a book, much more than I'd realised perhaps before. I love the title I've got at the moment, I should add. I really love it. My first two books were about things I never read myself. I thought they were very good and very interesting, but I never read them myself. So I could say quite honestly to people, oh, don't bother to read it. I wouldn't. But this time I thought I'll write something I like to read, I want to read. And what I like to read is thrillers, spy stories, murder in some form. I find murder very relaxing. Reading about love or watching about love is so not relaxing, but murder just is, you know, because they say a murder's going on in your mind all the time. My analysts used to say, psychoanalysts say that. And I do think it's relaxing when you read about or see something about murder. And I'm not a big ideas person, that I don't have loads of, some people have a lot of ideas and they can throw them out and one doesn't work, they can do it. I have very few ideas, so when I get them, I hold on to them for a long time. And when I'm reading and watching television, or I hold on to the ideas that interest me. In theory, I make a note of them, but then the notes get lost and I don't know. I've probably got a great pile of great notes somewhere that I don't know where. But I look for ideas that interest me and I put them together. And the book I'm writing now is that. The central idea, maybe I think this could be considered the central idea of this book, is which is a spy story. I got from a book, Elizabeth Bowen book I read ages ago, The Heat of the Day, and she's a great writer. So I didn't even notice the really interesting hook that she'd set up at first, because you're just taken up with everything else. And it took me a bit of time to think, well, it's really about that. And so I wanted to use the idea in her book, in The Heat of the Day, a woman, Stella, discovers her lover, Robert, is selling information to the enemy. And on the back of the book, it says Harrison, who's working for the government, I suppose, who's trailing Robert, wants to bargain with her, the price for his silence being Stella herself. Well, it's very different from anything that interests me, but I love the central idea. A woman told her husband or lover is spying for the Nazis, and what's her response? How does she handle it? What does she do? And in this case, in my book, nowhere near, although there is a line that I can recognize as like an Elizabeth Bowen style line, actually. I can say, oh, I can recognize that, but obviously I'm not but writing like her level, and wouldn't want, I'm trying to make it commercial. Claire Haldane is the central character, and she's Jewish, and so it's all the more poignant, hopefully. And also, I took the structure. There was on another level. That was plot, probably part of the plot. This is the structure, the whole book. I loved True Detectives, the series 1 anyway, on TV. I don't know if anyone else watched it, and oh, it was fantastic. And I loved the whole idea. It was these two men looking back on something horrible that happened 10 years earlier. And I love the idea, always love the idea of people looking back. So I put those two, I wanted to use those things. So this book I've written now is a spy story set in the Second World War, someone selling secrets to the Nazis. And there's lots of twists and turns before we find out who that is. Hopefully lots of twists. There are actually twists and turns. You really don't know it is surprising, apparently. And it's called Wait Till Everybody's Dead. Wait Till Everybody's Dead, which I love. I don't know what other people feel about it, because that just seems to be what has happened. Everyone who signed the Official Secrets Act in the war, all those really clever people, most of the really clever ones are dead or close to it, or very, very old by the time the secrets were revealed. We've just found out about Bletchley Park. We know a lot now. But by the time we did, people were very old. There were only a few quite old people, mostly Clark, not the real brains as well. So the whole idea of waiting till everyone's dead. I'm not writing about Bletchley because the place where the spy story is set is they're developing radar. It's the secrets of radar that are being given to the Nazis. And it could have been anything, but Andrew's father was one of the small team of men, very, very clever young men, mathematicians, physicists, taken from university in their early 20s. There was only about 6 of them taken to work on radar, and he developed radar. And he has been dead for a long time, and now, so Andrew's mum, Ruby, is dead too. So Oscar Levy, I couldn't ask Oscar, couldn't ask Ruby. And actually finding anything out about, it's not like Bletchley, finding anything out about radar and where the research was done, is incredibly difficult. I mean, I'm not a researcher anyway, but it's very, very hard. So in the end, I made it up. I read a lot about Bletchley Park. I knew that there was a place in Christchurch called Summerford House where there was work done on radar. I don't know I doubt that's where Oscar Levy went, but I wanted it to be near London. This was just a kind of practical thing in the plot, and Christchurch is fairly near. It's near Bournemouth, and I made up Summerford House. It doesn't exist anymore. It's razed to the ground, so I was free to make it up out of my own head, and also actual memories. I mean, I've read a lot about people's memories of Bletchley Park, so I've used that, but it's not Bletchley Park, of course. One of the interesting things also is I've just, about a month ago, read a book by someone called Frank Close, who's also a physicist, and it's a book. It's about the German physicist. I don't know how you say this name, Fuchs. Is that right? Who worked for Peels? I don't know, but anyway, Fuchs was the Americans got him in the end. He handed over secrets of research on atomic warfare to the Russians through the war and after. But what's so interesting is it's just mentioned in that, but all the German physicists like Peels and Fuchs, who wasn't so brilliant as Peels, but he was pretty good. They weren't allowed to work on radar because radar was a real top secret military secret of the war. So they were put, people like who were foreign and therefore weren't allowed to work on radar, were put were allowed to work on the development of atomic weapons. So that's why he became part of the atomic weapons route, which took him to America, and he gave all that to the Russians. Now, I've had a few working titles for this book along the way. I had C under colon spy, C under spy, which I liked, but I had 100 Kisses Deep, which I liked too, but it gave a bit too much away and was a bit Mills and Boon possibly. And I had Blackout, which I'm using but not as the title, until I got to this title, Wait Till Everybody's Dead, which is also from a line from a book, a Marlon James book, A Brief History of 7 Killings, which is also a great title, though I can't see why the book is called that at all, having read it. And I'll read you what he said, where I've taken it from is he's very different. He's writing about Jamaicans and Bob Marley, actually. So this is someone at the end of near the end of the book says this: yeah, you can use my real name. Then whose name you was going to use? But yeah, man, write the book. Just do me and yourself one favor. Wait till everybody dead before you publish it, all right? So that's where I got it from. And I obviously Wait Till Everybody Dead. I was a bit kind of, you couldn't say Wait Till Everybody Dead. So I've had to say Wait Till Everybody's Dead. So the story, the plot, the actual story of Somerford House and what's gone on there is set in 1941. But throughout the book, which I haven't quite finished yet, by the way, I still can't bring myself to get to the end. I know what's going to happen. I do know what's going to happen. Someone's got to die. You think I did really good at that? So it's set in 1941, but throughout the book are these inserts from the people involved, Claire Haldane and Larry Madden, who are looking back 40 years later. They're talking to someone and they're being taped, and we don't know yet until the end. Possibly don't realise they're talking to someone, and we certainly don't realise who that someone is right till the end. And so Claire Haldane, and this is something else as well, when you're writing a book, obviously you've got to have a beginning that draws people in and people like. I've written so many ones, more brutal, more bloody, and at the end I've come up, this is the beginning which hopefully will attract people in. Oh yeah. So it's London Southwest 6, VCR recording of Haldane, Claire, Ruth, 15th of July, 1981. And that's the heading of it. This is a true story. All the people, places, and incidents I'm describing here are real and not invented. I've had to change some of the names, of course, for obvious reasons. And I've dramatized a few of the events to make the whole thing flow more smoothly. Ditto some of the dialogue and the locations. Certain characters were condensed or, in one case, fully disguised. So now I suppose you're wondering just how true this tale really is. My name is Claire Haldane, and my husband Clive was one of the scientists involved in top secret work for the military during the Second World War. Strictly hush-hush stuff that no one was allowed to talk about for decades afterwards. Still too sensitive, you see. It wasn't the Nazis by then, it was the Russians making us nervous. And of course, we'd all signed the Official Secrets Act, so we couldn't breathe a word. Then, in the 70s, the information was declassified, and everyone was suddenly free to reveal as much or as little about their wartime experience as they chose. Too late for Clive, he was long gone, had been for almost a decade by then, dead with his secrets still intact. Most of the people he'd worked with were. Not me, though. Now I'm asked, actually actively encouraged to speak up again. The tape's running and you want to know what it was like back then in wartime Britain. You ask, what happened exactly at Somerford House during Operation Werewolf? You know, from your point of view. Tell us about that, just for the record. Exactly, God, I don't know. I've kept silent for so long, it's hard to talk about even now. I'm sorely tempted to simply say, no, forget it. Too much time has passed, I'm too damn old. Keep the whole thing shrouded in secrecy and relegate Clive's achievements to a few empty words in an obit at the back of a yellowing copy of the Times. Describe the Blitz, my secretarial job at Somerford's, very busy, a bit dull actually, and leave it at that. Nothing about any murders, nothing about anything illegal. The only thing stopping me is I'm pretty sure Clive wouldn't have wanted it that way. As ugly as the facts were, he'd have wanted them known. Call it vanity, but he was one of those men who believed scientific truth trumps everything. So let me begin by saying, for the record, that if I've told a lot of lies over the years and kept a few too many secrets, it's only because I had to. Don't judge me too harshly till you've understood a bit more. You can dislike me as much as you want then. I'll understand. Honestly, the way things went during Operation Werewolf, I didn't like myself much either in the end. But this is a true story. This is for Clive. And then we get part one, Operation Werewolf, and we're back in 1941 with Larry Madden going at Blackwater, going to pick up Claire Haldane. And then the story starts from there. So I've got a bit here. I'll try to get what I've done with it. I suppose the thing that I came out of this talk being most interested in was realizing how writing itself and creating a book are such different psychological tasks. I mean, and I'd be interested to know if anyone's got any thoughts about that. And I think in the early days I wrote, but I wasn't really writing a book, and I think this one is, I hope. So yes, so I don't know how long I've been speaking for. Feels like, oh yeah, ages. Okay. So now, any questions?
No, you're just on time, Gail. Don't worry. The purpose of this evening is also to have an opportunity for discussion, and I think you've certainly kind of opened our eyes to quite a few interesting things. And thank you for sharing a little bit of the work in progress as well. Although it sounds like could be finished if you wanted it to. Sounds like you're nearly there, which maybe we can all psychoanalyze together. But in the meantime, I'm happy for anyone who wants to share or reflect or answer any of the interesting questions Gail has posed. Just take yourself off mute. You're welcome to just kind of go ahead and shout out. Jackie.
Hi. I'm just looking for Gail on my screen now. Wave. Okay. Oh, there you are. You're just underneath me. That's great. So I love thrillers and, you know, bang, crash, kill,
yes.
Stuff. How much do you think this is something new? This is something that hasn't been done before. I suppose, what's your spin? What's your unique factor in this book, rather than we might have seen in other spy novels or thrillers?
I don't think that there is one. I think I don't. I tell you what there is that they said to me. It's quite unusual to have a woman protagonist, and apparently she holds you all the way through. So yeah, that's unusual apparently, but I can think of other thrillers that have got women, but not spy books apparently. That's not so usual. But other than that, I would, and I think the structure, it has been done because I'd be nervous of doing, I'm not Virginia Woolf, I'm not carving out different ways of doing things. I can't, oh, there you are. I think it's well done. but it's not. I wouldn't put this forward as the original thing, at all. And if they said I was like Le Carre or Elizabeth Bone, I go, yeah, great, all right, I love that.
That's brilliant.
Hello. I'm gonna ask my mum a question. Hi. You're looking for me. Just follow my voice.
You have to follow your voice, yeah.
So now that you've tried writing, or you've nearly finished writing, you're super close, a book that you would actually read, is that what you would keep doing as opposed to your previous books that you wouldn't bother reading yourself? That I personally love, but you wouldn't apparently. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer writing what you want to write or writing what you want to read?
I prefer. I was quite driven with the other ones. It had to go. I like writing what I mean now, and what I'm thinking is this will be made into an HBO series with Nicole Kidman, who's the wrong age completely, but she will be in it for sure. I can see her as Claire Haldane. Yeah, so I would definitely carry on writing things I like. I don't know why I spent such a long time writing things that I'm not passionately care about that much, I suppose I had to. There were things I had to do, but they were written in that style. They were written in a page, in a page-turnery way. They were meant to be written. But this is a real page turner, hopefully. I think it is.
I see Gwyneth Paltrow for what it's worth, not Nicole Kidman.
All right. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. Hi, Gail. That was really interesting, actually. In fact, before I ask my question, I also wanted to just share.
It's Simon and Diane.
Sorry. Okay. Hi. Actually, just hearing you talk about randomly throwing the word sex into titles to misspell things. In an earlier life, I had to kind of curate or edit a monthly publication called Savings and Mortgage Monthly, which heavily read. So we shortened it to S&M Monthly, and it became like a bestseller actually.
I thought of that. Yeah.
The question I wanted to ask you was not about the book you're currently working on, but generally is about the editing process. So I'm kind of like, presumably you're spending, hours, months, years on crafting and kind of wordsmithing your work. And then presumably you give it over to an editor who then, I assume, you don't do that, do you?
I never have. I'm planning to do something like that now. No, I've always done it myself, and that was a mistake. But I that's why I don't write as you're meant to write. I do really all wrong. You're not meant to go over things over again and again. I read from the beginning, I edit it, I change it all the way through. I can't get to the end till I feel happy with the beginning-ish. But no, I don't send it to an editor. I should, I will. But
this one you will give to an editor, do you think?
I will. Yeah.
How do you think you're going to feel about somebody interfering with your?
Well, someone already has. They liked it. They said I'm obviously very good at plot. I thought, well, I didn't even know what plot is. I mean, no, I don't understand what plot is, frankly. So how I can be good at it, but and the character is great. It holds you all the way through. Blah blah blah. But they thought I should, but some of the dialogue they thought we need to work on. And I'd like more red pencils, so what dialogue. And also they want to change the actual structure. I'm going to have to speak to them about that because I'm not so sure that's a good idea. But if they said to me, we'll take you on and publish this book if you do these changes, I would do it at this stage of my life. So I did have someone try and edit my first book and all the changes he wanted to make were just awful, and I just said no. Instead, the only thing he wanted to change, I think it was a digestive biscuits to a McVitie's, and that was absolutely right to the character, so I agreed to that one, but I can't remember. So you have to pay for an editor, and so and you've got to find one you like. So
Right.
yeah, so but I will this time. But I would change anything they said if they thought it would make it more publishable. I would. Really? More than McVitie's biscuits.
Don't let me stop anyone, but actually following up on Simon's question, Gail, if I can ask you one. You kind of hinted by virtue of the last question about editor that your path to publication might be unorthodox in some way. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you first got published, how you pursued that, what kind of publication? Because from what I understand, the world of publishing has changed quite a bit in the last couple of decades.
I'm not a good person to talk to about it because the first 2 books, it was a different world. I got published by small independents. The one that's just been published by Quartet, things were changing ever so slightly at that point. So they told me to go on Facebook and Twitter, which amazingly now it seems to me I wasn't on. So I went on Facebook and Twitter. They didn't do any public pushing themselves. Public, I can't think what the word is.
Marketing.
Marketing themselves. I was actually all, and I'm not a marketer. So although it sold quite well, it didn't get to any of the things. So this time, I think you either just self-publish and market. But I'm not really. Then you don't write. If you're marketing, frankly, but yeah. That's why I'm aiming to go for an agent, because if I can get an agent who then gets it published and sold to television, then I'll do whatever they say I should do. But left to my own devices, you've got to be on Facebook. You've got to say, this is the best thing that's ever been written. It's top of the Amazon. It's the best. I'm too British. I'm too English. It's good. It's quite good. Yeah, it's fine. No, if you don't want to read it, I understand. I'm no good. I'm no good at marketing. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's very different now. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, a lot of quite good writers, not saying great, because then they'd probably be taken up by Penguin or something, but good, aren't good at marketing. If you're good at marketing, it's another skill.
It is, yeah. I see Talia, who's taken herself off mute, presumably that's the question, and we've got Stephen and Michelle, I see with a hand up as well. Talia, do you want to go first?
Yes, I wasn't actually going to ask a question. I was going to give some insight about the publisher's side of things and possibly a warning. So when publishers buy a book for publication, seems completely counterintuitive, but the more that they have to pay for it, the more that they then want to recoup from it. So that if they buy a book quite cheaply, which in children's publishing often means about £2,500 as opposed to say £10,000, but in adult publishing you can probably increase those numbers by about 5-fold each, then they won't necessarily be committing to as much marketing spend. So with any kind of publishing contract, it's almost more useful to know and to have the publisher commit to what they're doing in the way of marketing your book, and how much they're spending on marketing your book is probably more useful information than how much they're actually paying you within a few £1,000s one way or the other, in the sort of if the success of the book rather than just getting the book published is what matters to you.
So. Yes, that was it before I got them published, but they weren't going to be successful because
I've worked on some wonderful books that have disappeared without trace because there's a marketing push behind them. So, anyway, sorry, that wasn't a question at all.
No, but really interesting insight as well. Certainly relevant. Stephen and Michelle, for some reason your audio is extremely loud.
Hello. Is that any better?
No, it's really not. I've just put you on mute because it's just burning out my eardrums. Can I ask you to type it in the chat? Is that okay? Do you mind? The chat box should be available that you can use. And if you just want to type it in the chat, then we can see that.
It's far too complicated, the chat box. I'll have to ring now.
Oh, I'm really sorry. If you want to WhatsApp me,
I can't believe it's that bad. Oh, is it that bad?
What have you done to it?
I don't know what's happened. Sorry.
Why don't we get him to do it through sign language, and we can try and guess what his question was? He can act his question. We can try and work it out.
I'm so sorry, Stephen. Should we play charades?
Oh, go on, give me a clue now. I'm done.
Yeah, no, now, okay, go quickly.
I have an interest in psychotherapy, sex, and murder. Do you think there is the option to combine that into a new novel?
I think the first one I wrote has a lot of that in it. I think Talia, it was Talia who said, how did Talia, you describe where it should be in a bookshop? If they had something like psychoanalysis and murder, that's where it should be. But there was quite a lot, it was psychoanalytic thinking. I used Freud in it a bit, yeah. Clearly, you know, I had quotes from him. I wouldn't do it like that now.
All right, thank you, Stephen. I'm glad we managed that. I think we have time for one more if anyone has. You're welcome to take yourself off mute.
Oh, Gail, hello, it's Lisbeth here. Hi. I wanted to ask you, you said you don't get loads of ideas, but the ideas you do get, where and when do you get them? How do they come to you?
Well, I told you that it was reading that book, for instance. Reading books and watching television, and I keep hold of whatever it is that sort of interests me. I don't quite know. It's a bit like, God knows where the ideas for the first two books came from. I just don't know. I think you write it down and then you sort of lose it, and then you put it together with something else. But that was a very clear, I remember, because it's Elizabeth Bowen's idea in the heat of the day. So I know that I got the basic idea from that. But the other bits that make it work, make that work for it, I don't know where I got them from. No idea. Just come.
Just on a follow-up to that, I'm curious, do you feel like you get those ideas fully formed, or do you get an idea and then you develop it yourself? I've heard different people who write speak about the role they play, and some people say, you know, it just comes from above, like a prophecy. I just have this story and I have to write it. And some people say, I just sit down and I think, what would make a good story, and then I put one together. Do you feel like that one of those two reflects you, or somewhere in between?
Possibly the first one is more like it, but it's probably more work than I think I've done. So I think I probably do work on it more than I think.
Yeah.
You know, you have these ideas which you think have come to you, and then you think, oh, that's rubbish, and then you add that, and then so it does change. I mean, this book, it is basically about what a woman would do if she's told her husband is a Nazi spy, and there's evidence that he's a Nazi spy, and what she does with that and what she thinks about it. But the other bits that I put in to make the story work, which make it more powerful in a way, I don't know where they came from. Yeah,
that's the bit of it that's magic, I think, and that's what's really interesting to have you with us this evening, to share some of that insight, Gail, because it's not something I think a lot of people have the opportunity to think about or ask about, and it's lovely to hear a little bit about the process, and also to hear a little bit about the story. I'm looking forward to reading it. Sounds like a page turner indeed.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Really, really a pleasure, and best of luck, I think, on the effort to have it with an agent and a publisher, and hopefully you can come back at Sam's book group and have it be one of the books that the book group reads in physical form not too long from now. In the meantime, big thank you to Gail for doing this evening, starting off our Havdallah Home series. Yes, lovely little silent claps, thank you. We're continuing next week with Simon Rickman, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about leadership. And the suggestion was made during this talk that maybe he should introduce sex into the title, so it's leadership and sex. That sounds slightly more controversial.
Better.
S&M, yes, going to hang on to that one, Simon. But in the meantime, we're going to do Havdallah together, so that we can start our week properly. And I'll invite anyone who has a Havdallah kit with them, if they'd like to bring it up so that we can see it together. And I will share the text on the screen for those who want to follow along. That might be tiny. That might be bigger. Hopefully it is. There we go. So turn out the lights on this end. Oh, now I can't see the lighter. More effective than planned. And it's definitely properly dark. Right. Let that catch. הנה אל ישועתי אבטח ולא אחד, כי עוזי וזמרתיה והיא לי ישועה. ושבתם מים בששון ממעניין הישועה. לאדוני הישועה עמך ואתך סלה. אדוני צבאות עמנו משגב לנו אלוהי יעקב סלה. אדוני צבאות אשרי אדם בוטח בך. אדוני הושיע המלך יעננו ויום קורנו. ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר כן תהיה לנו. כוס ישועות אשא ובשם אדוני אקרא. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן בורא פרי הגפן ניין ניין ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא מיני ושמים בורא מיני ושמים ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא מאורי האש בורא מאורי האש ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המבדיל בין קודש לחול בין אור לחושך בין ישראל לעמים בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול. And Gail's favorite part, our sizzle, candle, wine, very good crackle this evening, and a good psychoanalytic message as well, although I'm pretty sure that's different talk. Really lovely to see you all and wish you a very good week. And once again, a special thank you to Gail, who has given her time this evening to share with us. I'm sure if anyone has more questions, she'd be very happy to answer them. And Gail, I'm sure if you need any beta readers, you've got plenty of eager ones here. So thank you very much. I'm going to take everyone off mute in case everyone wants to say good evening, and we will see you next week. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Lovely.
Thank you, Gail.
Lovely to see Indigo in the corner there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Gail.